Hey guys, this video was a request to share some of the best DS and 3DS games of all time. However, most of the content in this channel is related to RPGs, so I'll share some of the ones I would definitely consider. However, I have already talked about some of them, and I don't think it is worth repeating myself several times, so to save you the chatter with some, I won't be talking about Castlevania, Chrono Trigger, Fire Emblem Awakening, Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey, but also I won't be talking about some of the games you can find in current systems, as The World Ends With You, some Final Fantasy games, and so on. You can find the list of the ones I have already talked about in the description. So I'll be looking at the, let's say, following best of all time, with no particular order among them. And if you have a request for a top video or something like that, related to RPGs, let me know. I may not be able to pull them right away, but I can schedule them somewhere around. Without further ado, let's begin. In the first entry for the 3DS, I will say Bravely Second and Layer. This RPG is the continuation from Bravely Default. Back in the day, many said that this game didn't live up to the original expectations. However, looking at it for what it is, I gotta say that it's definitely worth the time, as we get to see what happened with Tis after his ending in the first game. There is a catchy twist because for the most part we are going to follow Yu genealogy, after Agnes was abducted by Kaiser Oblivion, where later down the line Yu is betrayed, and in the face of these events he assembles a new party with Magnolia Arc, a ballbuster from the moon, Lydia Lee and Tisarior, former companions of Agnes. This party works along a mysterious character and Agnes to stop Kaiser Oblivion. Story-wise it was predictable in some moments, but the game never really tried to keep everything as something unexpected. And the way these characters evolved as the adventure flowed was definitely good. What I also liked that they didn't commit the same mistake as in the first game, looping hand events several times. However, if you know about that, here there is another catchy thing once time stops. The puzzle that is cryptic, but I definitely loved it. Gameplay wise, it is similar as the first game, whereas you beat some main bosses you acquire jobs, and it is all about changing between them and finding the right balance in your party, while traversing different dungeons and the overworld. I would say that the game has a nice balance through the whole adventure, a bit shorter than the first game, but then again, worth the time. In the following entry for the DS, Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside the Story. I've said it sometimes and I'll say it again. Mario RPGs are some of the best to get into the genre. They are short RPGs with dumb but really entertaining stories, and these along partners in time shine a lot. Here we are going to follow a funny story where there is a new disease in Mushroom Kingdom, known as the Blorbs, where they inflate as balloons and start rolling. It is quickly found out that the Blorb mushroom is the one turning everyone into balloons, and as if things couldn't be worse, Bowser appears. But we know how this story ends because, well, Mario has to win. However, after finding himself in Dimblewood, Bowser is tricked to eat a vacuum shroom. Then he returns to the castle where he absorbs Mario, Luigi and others into his stomach. There is no violence here, so they were just reduced in size, and from that point onwards, this laughable story will take several turns here and there. Gameplay wise, it is a turn-based RPG where every input matters, turning its gameplay into something quite dynamic, as every item and new mechanic keeps on adding entertaining ways to play around. And to put the cherry on top, they made several moments even more entertaining, as you get to play as Bowser, linking some activities inside and outside. In the next spot for the 3DS, I will say Fire Emblem Echoes. This game had some mixed point of views at first, but that was due to some misinformation about its gameplay. However, right now it's completely safe to say that this is another excellent strategic RPG. This is the remake from Fire Emblem Gaiden, where we follow Alm and Celica in separate journeys trying to unite and bring peace to Valencia, after it was divided by Mila and Duma. While some people argue that this story was nothing but another Shadow Dragon with all ideas, the fact is that the intelligent system brought a lot of life to this game, as every character feels as if they belong to the story, rather than just letting Alm and Celica shine. And another cool thing to play this game is that if you liked Fire Emblem Awakening, ironically here you can find more about Grima, the main antagonist from Awakening, and link stories between Shadow Dragon, Awakening and so on. Gameplay wise, this game has all the classic features from Fire Emblem, but with several improvements in between, as the casual mode, chances to return several choices while in combat, in case you don't want to reset the game, a button to quickly move your units as some maps are kinda big, and stuff like that. While this could trivialize the game for hardcore fans, you can always play without resorting to any of them. Essentially, we could divide the gameplay into two parts. The classic fights where we advance stage after stage, managing our units for particular challenges or using our favorite characters. And dungeons, where we can run in third person while exploring different areas, and as soon as we find an enemy, jump into our classic way to play. There are some mechanics that may be seen as tedious as fatigue, but the fact is that it is not that hard to play around them, so yep, definitely worth it. In the next DS 3DS game, Pokémon Heart Gold, Soul Silver, X and Y. While the DS had many Pokémon games, the one I still place above White, Black, Diamond, Pearl is this version. Because back in the original idea it was all about catching every single Pokémon. So throwing Johto and combining Kanto all together made these games feel immersive in a cool way. By the way, if I don't talk about its story, it's because we all know that that is not the main forte of this franchise. However, it is a nice adventure where we explore 2 regions and fight new and old gym leaders while enjoying a packed game, where we find up to the 4th generation around this world. So this one is extremely recommended because you get to know lots of mons and pretty much how this whole mess started. As for the 3DS, we also have several entries. However, I was never a fan of the C moves, and by that point I just wanted to throw my Pokémon collection out of the window. Now I consider it is debatable between Sapphire and Ruby, but if you play the originals in the GBA, then I will go directly into X, Y. While competitive playing was turned into a meme with Omegas, the fact is that if you play these games for pure fun, they added here my most appreciated mechanic. So these 2 are the ones I would recommend for those reasons. Gameplay wise, I could summarize it as you are playing a rather complex rock paper scissors with up to 6 mons in your party, so you can pretty much balance the game however you like. In general, these games are on the super easy side, so you can throw all your useless moves into a Bidoof and press on with the other ones. In the next DS entry, Advance Wars Dual Strike. Before anyone says anything, I know that this is not an RPG, but a tactical game definitely worth throwing in between. While the previous entries didn't have that great of stories, this is where it took an interesting new approach. Of course, story-wise we need to play the previous games for small plot reasons. However, here we are told that, despite having defeated the Black Hole, in a far land it is assembling once again with a new leader. Thus the Orange Star, Blue Moon, Green Earth and Yellow Comet join forces to free their land. And while this is just the prologue, the Neo characters are quite likable, perhaps falling a bit into classy teenage tropes but likable nonetheless. As for its gameplay, we receive a lot of new units, and new interesting ways to play by choosing 2 co-ops. This, fortunately or unfortunately, it's going to be hated or loved, because ideally you want to balance your team, but you also need to pay attention to the other screen, manage resources, and once you have the chance to use the freaking tag, oh boy, hang on tight, because moving units 2 or up to 3 times can be nerve-wracking, as you can see your whole battalion fall like flies. Of course, in the worst case scenario. And with that, everything has been said. Strategy, strategy, strategy. That is all you need here. There are some other game modes, but I don't think they hold that high. Let's follow with Shin Megami Tensei 4 in the 3DS. I know Apocalypse was slightly higher, but to be perfectly honest, I enjoy this game a bit more. Story-wise, we are going to follow Flynn, the main character who takes the test to become into a samurai. Of course, for plot reasons, he passed among others. That is how they receive gauntlets with artificial intelligence to control demons. However, shortly after, some books with title Knowledge and Wisdom start to get distributed, and whomever had the misfortune of reading these books turned into a demon. That is when Flynn and company are sent to confront this mysterious character under the name of Black Samurai. Nonetheless, things turn into another direction, having to descend the Naraku, where they find themselves inside a skyscraper that connects Mikado and a nightmarish version of Tokyo, which is surrounded by a huge dome. That, of course, if you're tenacious enough to press further, because as pretty much any other SMT, it's going to beat the shit out of you many times. And here we have the classic press start system, where if you hit a weakness, you get a chance to act 2 times. But this same effect goes for the enemies, so balancing your team, acquiring demons, fusing, and so on are must. What's worth mentioning is that this was not the best of stories, as side characters are left pretty much as that, side characters, so it is not that much worth introducing them to you. Of course, as you advance, you will quickly catch why these side characters came along with you, but putting some of those things aside and the quest that you need to finish the game, to get the true ending, this was a really good game. Then, Final Fantasy Tactics A2 for the DS. In this game we are going to follow Luso, a student who's going to have the summer of his life, perhaps not in the way he wanted, because he is detained and sent to the library, where he finds a book where once he signs his name, Luso gets transported inside of it, following him to Ivalice, where Sid protects the child, and from this point onwards be prepared to read a boring story, because for some reason they decided to override it into localization, and also because it is not that engaging. As for the gameplay, I will say that this game is liked by many, but I will say that it's more about nostalgia, because if you play it once again, it feels slow. The game is really entertaining as you play the main story, dive a freaking lot into getting skills by not breaking some laws to get points in a fast way and so on, but all of this in a grindy and a slow adventure. This is what I will say, if you can emulate it, take that route. Otherwise, prepare a good movie, series, anime, or another thing in between, because this game in the original DS is slow, and I cannot stress this enough. Anyways, here we will dive really deep into lots of side quests, where you can find most of the entertaining parts of the story, as you get to help different clans. Some of them quite engaging, some others dumb but entertaining. However, you need to manage a bit this aspect as they expire. So probably you want to balance this by jumping into some and sending other units in between, and plan accordingly for customization, as this is where you may take quite the time. In the next entry, Etrian Odyssey IV. The RPGs are a thing here, and as I cannot mention A Strange Journey, Etrian Odyssey V, 1, 2 and 3, as I have already shared thoughts about them, I would probably throw Persona, but I haven't played those games so I cannot say for sure. What stands in a cool way for me about Etrian Odyssey IV is that it had an interesting and refreshing way to change things, because in the first games it was all about going up or down in multiple stratums and keep moving forward, and while some parts of this game work like that, you also have the chance to explore an overworld and find some hidden areas here and there, gather resources and so on. Of course, this is entertaining if you create a solid group, and while I would encourage people to do that in whatever way they want, the fact is that for the nature of this video I would recommend you to check a guide, or use the classy team composition with healer, magician and defender, along 2 damage dealers. If I don't jump into its story, it's because Etrian Odyssey in general is kinda okay on that front. Up to this point I will say that some small parts are entertaining, but few will stay with you. So its gameplay and level of customization is where I will say the whole fun lies. And also because low-key it brought a mechanic that was used in all the RPGs, by having to draw your own maps, which is cool that Atlus gave us the chance to refresh that old experience. While this entry made raise eyebrows for those mainstream players, it is here because the fact is that a lot of people really enjoy this franchise, and low-key, lots and lots of old school ideas. And last but not least, Dragon Quest V. And this is a story that will play you by a fool at least 2 times. While its narrative could be said to be funny, cartoonish and trivial in some moments, the fact is that once you put all the pieces together in a critique way, this is a quite sad story. Not the darkest of Dragon Quest, but a sad story, perhaps a lonely one, with numerous metaphors in between, and I don't want to dive so much into it because just saying names or the unusual names pretty much gives away one important part of its story. Anyway, for somewhere around 30-40 hours this is a really good game. Not for everyone, but good game nonetheless. Its gameplay is divided in multiple parts. At first we are going to follow the father of the main protagonist, and he will pretty much beat the heck out of everyone, until we have the chance to venture further and start capturing monsters. By that point you will notice that probably your party is randomly created as you capture monsters, so it is not entirely worth spending so much time, until perhaps way later. For the most part I will say that RNG needs to be a bit on your side, or you'll have to grind for smaller sessions here and there, as this game is quite challenging in some moments. Probably the last stretch of the game is where it feels a bit tiring, as you can get real lost between the few things you were not able to do at first, so I will say, try to keep a record of every little detail that you were not able to complete, that way you can speed things a bit. And that's it, I hope you found this video informative. Thank you so much for watching, and hasta la próxima!